I had always thought of myself as a rational man. I didn't scare easily, nor did I believe in things that go bump in the night. But all that changed the evening I found myself alone in my isolated house, with something far from this world watching me My house sits on a quiet plot of land, nestled at the edge of a dense forest, miles from the nearest neighbor. The isolation was something I cherished, a peaceful retreat from the hustle and bustle of city life. It was just me, the trees, and the endless stretch of sky. That particular evening, I was sitting in my living room, nursing a glass of bourbon and reading an old novel. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the room. It was a cold night, and the wind howled outside, making the trees sway like skeletal fingers tapping at the windows. As I turned the page, a noise caught my attention. It was faint at first, a soft rustling sound, like leaves being disturbed. I dismissed it as the wind, though it was odd for it to be that distinct. I tried to return to my book, but the sound persisted, growing louder with each passing moment. Annoyed, I set my book aside and stood up, moving to the window. The forest was dark, the trees swaying under the force of the wind, their branches casting eerie shadows on the ground. I peered out into the night, searching for the source of the noise, but saw nothing unusual. But the sound didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, a shuffling noise mixed with something else, something I couldn't quite place. It was like the low rumble of an animal's growl, but deeper, more resonant, like the earth itself was groaning. My heart began to pound as I strained to see through the darkness. Then, I saw it. A pale figure standing just beyond the tree line. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the swaying branches. But as I focused, I realized it was real. The figure was tall, impossibly so, with limbs that seemed too long and spindly for its body. Its skin was a sickly white, almost translucent, and it seemed to glow faintly in the dark, as if illuminated from within. The creature stood still, its head slightly tilted as if it were observing me. I couldn't see its face. Not clearly, but I could feel its gaze, heavy and piercing, like icy fingers wrapping around my heart. A chill ran down my spine, and I took a step back from the window, my mind racing. Was this some kind of animal, a person in a costume? But deep down, I knew that this was neither. I reached for my phone, intending to call someone, anyone, but my hand froze mid-reach. The creature moved. It took a slow, deliberate step forward, its long limbs moving in a way that was both fluid and unnatural. The moment its foot touched the ground, the sound returned, only now it was louder, more pronounced, as if the very earth was protesting its presence. Panic set in. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. My hands shaking so badly that I almost dropped it. The line rang once, twice, and then there was a click. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, almost disinterested, a stark contrast to the terror clawing at my throat. There's something outside my house, I stammered, unable to tear my eyes away from the window. The creature was closer now, its long arms swaying slightly as it walked. I don't know what it is, but it's not human. Sir, please stay calm. Can you describe what you're seeing? The operator asked, her tone still maddeningly calm. It's tall, pale. Its skin is almost glowing. It's getting closer, I said, my voice trembling. The operator asked for my address, and I rattled it off without taking my eyes off the creature. It was only a few yards from the house now, and I could see its face more clearly, or rather, the lack of it. The creature's face was a smooth, featureless plane, devoid of eyes, nose, or mouth. Yet somehow, I knew it was looking right at me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the thing could see into my very soul. Sir, officers are on their way. Please stay inside and lock your doors, the operator instructed, her voice finally showing a hint of urgency. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and slowly backed away from the window. The creature was almost at the edge of the yard now, its movements slow and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. I moved to the front door, double-checking the locks, then did the same with the back door and windows. The house was secure, but I didn't feel any safer. Whatever this thing was, it didn't seem bound by the normal rules of nature. I returned to the living room, my eyes darting between the windows, trying to keep track of the creature's movements. The wind outside had picked up, and the trees were thrashing wildly, their branches scraping against the roof and walls. But I could still hear the creature, its steps heavy and deliberate, growing closer with each passing moment. Then the noise stopped. The silence was deafening. I held my breath, straining to hear any sign of the creature, but there was nothing. Had it gone? Was it toying with me? I forced myself to walk back to the window, my heart hammering in my chest. I hesitated for a moment before peeking out, expecting to see the creature standing right there, but the yard was empty. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Something moved in my peripheral vision, and I snapped my head to the side, just in time to see a shadow pass by the side window. It was closer, much closer. It was circling the house, looking for a way in. My mind raced, trying to think of what to do. I couldn't just sit here and wait for it to break in. I needed to find a way to protect myself, to keep it out. The thought of my basement crossed my mind. It was an old cellar, more of a storm shelter really, with thick concrete walls and a heavy door. It wasn't much, but it was the only place in the house that felt even remotely secure. I made my way to the basement door, pausing only to grab the heavy flashlight from the kitchen drawer. The basement was cold and damp, with a faint, musty smell that always made me sneeze, but it was the safest place I could think of. I locked the door behind me and descended the creaky wooden stairs, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the enclosed space. The basement was dark, save for the dim beam of the flashlight, and the walls seemed to close in around me. I reached the bottom of the stairs and took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. The creature was still out there. I was sure of it, but at least I was safe down here. Or so I thought. I was about to sit down on an old crate when I heard it, the sound of something heavy dragging across the floor above me. The creature had found its way inside. My blood ran cold, and I held my breath, listening as the sound grew louder. It was in the house, moving through the rooms, searching. I could hear it brushing against the walls, knocking over furniture, the heavy thud of its footsteps reverberating through the floor. I backed away from the stairs, moving deeper into the basement. There was no way out except back up the stairs, and that was no longer an option. I was trapped. The noise way upstairs grew louder, more frantic, as if the creature knew I was close. It was in the living room now, the same room I had been sitting in just moments ago, and I could hear it breathing, a deep, guttural sound that sent shivers down my spine. I pressed myself against the far wall, gripping the flashlight so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I could hear the creature on the stairs now, each step slow and deliberate, the wood creaking under its weight. I tried to stay calm, to think of something, anything, that could help me survive. But all I could think about was that featureless face, the cold, empty gaze that had locked onto me from across the yard. The creature reached the bottom of the stairs, and the basement seemed to grow colder, the air heavy with dread. I could hear it moving closer, that dragging sound echoing in the confined space, and then it stopped. The silence was suffocating. I held my breath, every muscle in my body tensed, waiting for the inevitable. The creature was so close now that I could almost feel its presence, a suffocating weight that pressed down on me. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe, as the creature slowly, agonizingly slowly, approached the far wall. I could hear its breathing now, harsh and ragged, like a predator that had cornered its prey. Then, without warning, the flashlight flickered and went out, plunging the basement into total darkness. I stifled a gasp, my heart racing as I fumbled with the flashlight, trying to get it to work. But it was no use. The batteries were dead, and I was left alone in the dark, with that thing mere feet away. I could feel it now, its presence so close that it was almost suffocating. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that it would just go away. that I would wake up from this nightmare. But deep down, I knew that this was real, and that there was no waking up from it. The creature was right in front of me now, so close that I could hear its breathing, feel the cold air that it exhaled. I could smell it too, a foul, metallic stench that made my stomach churn. And then, in the darkness, I felt it, something cold and slimy brushing against my arm. I flinched, instinctively pulling away, but there was nowhere to go. The creature was right there, inches away, and I was trapped. I could hear it now, moving closer, its breath hot against my skin. And then, in the darkness, I felt something cold and slimy wrap around my wrist. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The creature tightened its grip, pulling me closer, and I could feel its cold, clammy skin against mine, its breath against my face. And then, I felt it, something sharp, pressing against my neck. The last thing I heard before the darkness claimed me was the sound of the creature's breathing, harsh and ragged as it leaned in close. Then, nothing.